Okay, so let me get this straight. The sitting Vice President of the United States, JD Vance, walked into the Richard Nixon Foundation. The foundation literally named after the only president in U.S. history to resign from office in disgrace, and told the crowd that Watergate was just a temporary news story, that Nixon was brought down by the deep state at the Nixon Foundation. And while Vance is doing revisionism for Nixon's fan club, Elon Musk's Doge is firing veterans, Texas hospitals are turning away women having miscarriages, and Trump just killed a bipartisan housing bill, all in the same week. I could not write this if I tried, and I write commentary for a living. Today we've got 5 clips. JD Vance rewriting Nixon's legacy at his own foundation, Doge running a chainsaw through federal agencies, a VA vet who got fired and won a congressional primary anyway, a Texas woman who had to fly to Portugal for emergency miscarriage care, and Trump playing hostage taker with a housing bill. Hit subscribe. You are going to want to be here for this.
I'm actually fascinated by Nixon as a character in history. I think that his historical legacy is enjoying a bit of a renaissance, but I think deservedly so. As I joked with Robert backstage, if Watergate happened tomorrow, it would be like a 12-hour news story. Like, the idea that it would have taken down a presidency is crazy. And by the way, if you look at the story of how the deep state took down Richard Nixon, it's not all that different from what the same groups of people, the same institutions tried to do to Donald Trump in the first Trump administration. There is a parallel.
Watergate would be like a 12-hour news story. You know what? The thing is, he's probably right. Compared to the lies and scandal and corruption that we have endured under the Trump administration, Watergate would be child's play to this White House. And the vice president, he all but admitted that. Vance probably is not fazed by Nixon's conduct, lying to the American people and hush money being sent around and using and abusing executive privilege, because this administration does it on the daily.
All right, so let's actually unpack what just happened. JD Vance stood at the Richard Nixon Foundation and told us Watergate was a temporary news story driven by the deep state. Here are the actual receipts. Nixon resigned on August 9th, 1974, the first and only president to do so in American history. The House Judiciary Committee had already passed 3 articles of impeachment before he quit: obstruction of justice, abuse of power, and contempt of Congress. And Nixon himself fired the special prosecutor who was investigating him on October 20th, 1973, an event history calls the Saturday Night Massacre. This was documented criminal conduct in the official record, not the deep state, crystal clear.
It is hard to forget the image of Elon Musk with a chainsaw, wielding it around at the CPAC conference last year like a toddler with a new toy. A perfect symbol for the man who partnered with Donald Trump to do what Donald Trump does best: move fast and break things, seemingly not thinking or caring about any repercussions. It's the strategy they took when they created the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, to do just that: move fast and break things. To use the metaphorical chainsaw to make cuts to everything from public health programs that help lower cancer rates to the funding needed to stop and fight wildfires, and cuts to federal jobs across the board. The consequences of those cuts are still being felt today after agencies and offices and services were drained of critical institutional knowledge. My colleague Steph Rule and I talked to a bunch of those fired federal workers at a town hall around this time last year, reflecting on Trump's first 100 days back in office. One of them was...
Now, DOGE. The Department of Government Efficiency is not a government agency in any traditional sense. It's a task force led by Elon Musk, a man elected to nothing, confirmed by nobody, and worth somewhere north of $300 billion. He is the richest person on the planet, and he has been handed the keys to the federal hiring and firing process. The chainsaw metaphor you just heard is not an exaggeration. They gutted public health positions. They went after VA workers, the people whose job it is to answer when a veteran calls in crisis. That is what Doge looks like in practice. And the next clip is going to show you exactly who absorbs the hit.
Alyssa Ellman joins me now. She will face Republican Congresswoman Claudia Tenney in the midterms in November. Alyssa, it's so good to see you again.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So much has happened. Why get into this fight now?
We have to have regular people run for office. It's not that complicated. We need to get new people in across the board so that regular people can be represented. In my district, the average income is $42,000 a year. I don't know how they can be represented by the current people who are representing them. Claudia Tenney is the type of representative who is doing this as a political career. She's doing it to enrich herself. She's been in trouble for campaign finance law violations, and we can offer something better.
You mentioned that Claudia Tenney has been at this for a while. This is her fifth term that she's running for. She's got name recognition. She's got a ton of money. The district has way more Republican voters than Democratic voters. Is your game plan to focus on what we've been talking about this hour on the broadcast, the $42,000?
Alyssa Ellman is a veteran. She served this country. Then she went to work at the Buffalo VA, directly supporting the veterans she served alongside. Doge fired her. That is what the chainsaw actually hits when it swings. Not a line item on a spreadsheet, a person. But here is the part that matters. She didn't quit. She ran for New York's 24th congressional district and won the Democratic primary. That is the answer to what we just watched. Career politicians treat government like a career. Billionaires treat it like a sandbox. Sometimes the only fix is for someone who actually paid the price to walk through the door themselves.
For the federal government. And I think we've got a long way to go.
You are a subject of a new documentary from the same people behind the film Heist, which was nominated for an Emmy Award this year, which focused on the massive purge of federal workers. What can you tell us about this film and what it's been like to have this journey for you chronicled from fired federal worker, forced out federal worker, to the Democratic nominee in New York's 24th district?
I think it's really a cool opportunity, and win or lose, we're documenting what we do to fight back. And we're not laying down and taking it. We're going to fight back. We're going to fight for working people. We're fighting for the people in this district, and win or lose, this is worth fighting for. And the people in my district are worth fighting for. They're people that I've served my entire adult life, both as a special ed teacher and as an employee at the VA. And I love this area. I love my friends and neighbors. And I love them whether they voted for Donald Trump or not. And I don't know if they can say the same thing about my opponent.
Tell us about, you have an uphill battle. Tell us about New York's 24th district, and tell us about what you were hearing during the primary election and what you...
This is the segment I want you to sit with. Lynn Calloway was having a miscarriage in Austin, Texas. Medical emergency. She went to the first hospital. Turned away. She went to a second hospital. Turned away again. Not because the doctors didn't know what to do, because the near total abortion ban Texas passed after Roe v. Wade fell in June 2020. 2 carries penalties so severe, criminal charges, prison time, license revocation, that doctors are afraid to provide care even when a patient's life is on the line. So Lynn Calloway eventually got on a plane. She flew to Portugal, and she received the emergency reproductive care there that 2 Texas hospitals refused to give her at home. The politicians who wrote that Texas law call themselves pro-life. Yeah, that is the appropriate response.
From the Tuesday victories of Zohran Mamdani's progressive slate here in New York, is there anything that you saw there that you would think that would be applicable to you in New York's 24th?
Oh, man, New York 24 is really different than New York City. The people in upstate New York do not find New York City to be the example that they want to follow. I think that Zoran Mamdani works perfectly for New York City, but in upstate rural New York, we're talking about compromise. We're talking about sitting down and thinking of practical solutions for these problems that we face together. And most people out here are not going to get on board with democratic socialism. They just want reasonable leadership and somebody who's doing it for the right reasons.
Alyssa Ellman, congressional candidate for New York's 24th Congressional District. Thank you so much for joining us.
So let me make sure the math is clear here. Trump had a bipartisan housing bill on the table. The 21st Century Road to Housing Act. Bipartisan. A Republican mayor from Columbia, South Carolina, and a Democratic mayor from San Diego were in the same room, saying the same thing. We need this. People are being crushed by housing costs right now. And Trump killed it. Not because it was bad policy, because he wanted to use it as leverage to force a vote on his federal elections restrictions package. He held housing relief for real Americans hostage to win a political argument. That is the gotcha. That is the move he can't spin out of. That is not governing. That is extortion with a press release. Here is the zoom out. The VP is at the Nixon Foundation telling us corruption wasn't really corruption. An unelected billionaire is firing the people who serve veterans. A woman had to leave the country to get emergency health care. And a bipartisan housing bill that both parties actually agreed on dies because one man wanted a bargaining chip. Same pattern in every single story. Power being used against the people it's supposed to protect. So here's the line if someone brings this up at the dinner table. It's not left versus right. Ask who pays when the powerful get it wrong. Because right now, the answer is veterans, women in medical emergencies, and anyone who can't afford rent. Hit like, subscribe, share it with someone who needs to see it. I'll catch you in the next one.